Hello again. I'm Nick, and you're watching this month's Song of Asirra devlog. This month I want to do something a little different, and talk about personal deadlines, how I'm trying to hold myself to them, and the ways in which I've been successful and not so successful. Also, since this is the last devlog video for the year, I want to take some time to look back and reflect on some of my favorite additions to the game over the course of 2020. But before we get into all of that, let's do a quick recap of this past month's work. I've continued working on the game's first temple, the Shaded Sanctuary. There are several new areas, like this dark maze, and this secret room which you might find early on, but can only be accessed once you have the glider. Speaking of which, the glider is now rewarded after beating the temple's mini-boss, the Megmal. This battle required a lot of new code and art, but I'm pretty happy with the results. My Patreon patrons got to see a full unedited video of the fight a couple weeks ago. If you're interested in seeing that, or just in supporting me on this journey in general, click the link in the description to see what rewards you could get as a patron. On the subject of enemies, I've added a cool new creature to the Singing Woods called a Norokoro. They're spirits who defend the forest. They pop up and throw rocks at you, but hide underground if you get too close. The only way to defeat them is to hit their rock back with perfect timing. Of course, as a magical forest spirit, you can't actually hurt them, but they'll accept you and leave you alone for a while. And finally, I've given some attention to the Game Over system, which has been pretty janky and essentially untouched since Demo 2 came out over a year ago. Now you get a nice graphic and a couple of menu options that all do exactly what they say. The save and quit option is great, because before this there was literally no way to return to the game's title screen except for closing the entire program and reopening it. So that covers the major updates for this month. I also fixed a lot of bugs and handled what I, as a software engineer, would describe as technical debt. Essentially, this is all the little problems that pile up as you add features, and if you don't fix them, they eventually all come back to bite you. They're not fun or flashy, but they're important and time-consuming. And that brings me to the second topic I wanted to discuss today, which is deadlines and how to hold myself to making progress as an indie developer. I've mentioned before that I've been working towards a Demo 3, which in my mind has always been a slice of the final game, including all content from the prologue all the way through completing the Shaded Sanctuary Temple. There were about 8 months of development time between Demo 1 and Demo 2, which came out in May of 2019. At the time I set the goal for myself of finishing Demo 3 by end of year 2019. Obviously that didn't happen, and I reset my personal deadline for end of year 2020. Well, here we are again, and I'm still not finished with it, despite working on the game consistently and making great progress week after week. I think the number one problem that's prevented me from meeting my deadlines is just a severe underestimation of the amount of work required. When you see the whole game mapped out in your head, it doesn't feel that long. But when you consider that every new area, new enemy, new item needs new art, code, music, sound effects, and that doesn't even get into the technical debt I was mentioning earlier, or the fact that sometimes you just have to spend a whole day trying to fix one bug, or when updating GameMaker or some plugin introduces new problems. One way I've been trying to get a clearer picture recently is by using Jira, which is an issue tracker. I've tried other issue trackers for Song of Asirra in the past, but since I use this one at my day job, I'm much more comfortable with it. I've been writing up all the work I need to do, whether that's new features, new music, or bugs that need fixing, into tickets here. I've tagged all of the issues that need to be completed before I can deliver Demo 3, and I can filter that list down to just the tickets I haven't completed yet, so I can get a sense of how much work is really left. This isn't comprehensive, and some of these tickets might need to be broken down into subtasks once I take some time to really scope them out, but this is a lot more insight than I used to have into the true work left to do. It feels bad to have missed the mark on Demo 3 by this much, but making mistakes is part of growing, and my Patreon patrons especially are amazingly patient and lovely. Thanks for sticking with me, all of you. I hope I can learn from this and be more realistic about my personal deadlines in the future. Based on my new estimates, I now think I can deliver Demo 3 in the first half of 2021, at which point it will have been 2 full years since Demo 2. But I've done so much work on the game in that time, it's hardly recognizable, and the end result is absolutely going to be worth it. Which brings us to the fun part of the video, looking at the highlights of 2020's development. I don't need to tell anyone that 2020 has been really awful in many ways, but I've been extremely fortunate to still have my steady day job and convert to working from home, and I've managed to find more time this year to work on Song of Asirra than ever, so I was able to make some really amazing progress. First big highlight of the year, the game's new lighting system. Before this year, Song of Asirra had really simple, flat lighting. This year I made some massive upgrades. Lights have soft edges and cast real-time shadows. Nothing has made a bigger difference to the atmosphere and ambience of the game than this. Next up, quick spellcasting. This year I introduced a major overhaul to the game's magic system. Now your spells can be assigned to this quick casting pop-up, which tells you the required materials and lets you cast with just a couple button presses. Before this, you had to open a menu screen, brew a potion, equip it, and then cast the spell. Now it couldn't be easier. Speaking of menu screens, this year I finally created a proper pause menu. It has a quest list, a really nice inventory screen, and a menu for rearranging your quick spell slots. I'm planning on adding more to it soon, like a map and a settings page, but for now the addition of these menus makes the game feel a lot less like a tech demo and a lot more like a game. Another highlight this year, I created the Singing Woods, which is the first major open area in the game. Up until 2020, I had only been working on Lilliput Village, so to finally start working on a level full of monsters, secrets, puzzles, and more was really rewarding. It took a ton of new art, music, and code, and it's a major accomplishment of this year. Finally, the last big thing I want to highlight are Elia's new tricks. This year I taught her how to push and pull things, and of course I introduced the glider. Having these new moves in her arsenal makes the game's world a much more interesting place, with more ways to interact with it and get around. The game is really shaping up, and building new areas and puzzles around these new moves is a big part of that. Of course, if you've been tuning into these devlogs every month, or if you're a Patreon patron and have been reading the weekly check-in posts, you know that these highlights just scratch the surface. But I think it really just goes to show how far we've come, even if we still have a long way to go. I want to thank each and every one of you who support me on this game dev journey in any way. I've always wanted to make an epic adventure like Song of Asirra, and you're all helping me make it happen, so thank you for being here. That's all for this video, and all for this year. I hope you join me again when we're back in 2021. There will be plenty more content to come. Have a great holiday season, stay safe, and keep being awesome. Cheers!
Huh.